Girl, it's your time. Don't ever ever change your mind, 'cause you're mine.
My name is Vivek Shraya, and I'm a Toronto-based artist, originally from Edmonton. I have written a couple books. I'm also a filmmaker and in a band with my brother called Too Attached. I identify as trans. I feel like I achieved peak masculinity. Like, I did have the muscles, I did have the beard, but I was still not happy. I am grateful to have had the courage to push against that. I've been asked to be the Grand Marshal, or one of the Grand Marshals of Pride this year. Pride has historically been kind of like a complicated space as a bisexual person, and has sometimes also felt like a white space. So I feel like getting to take up space as a brown, trans person feels like an amazing, wonderful gift.
Can't forget you.
I've made a number of different art projects that feature my mom or inspired by my mom in some way. My mom has always wanted to have 2 sons. After seeing how women and girls were treated when it came to her having children, she was like, no, I do not want girls. And so she prayed. They ended up being lucky having 2 boys. My hair started growing very long, and so for the first 2 years of my life, I was confused for a girl. I remember as a child watching my mom getting dressed up and putting on makeup and just being so fascinated. The Trisha Project, which is a series of photos of my mom that I recaptured with myself as a subject. The project is to honor my mom, of course, but to also honor the daughter she wasn't allowed to want. Really interested in any art that I make to be a complicated narrative, and that includes any art I make about my mom. I wonder how that has affected my gender identity, the fact that I was mistaken for a girl for the first 2 years of my life, and that's sort of where the idea for my first book, God Loves Hair, comes from. I step into the dress and close my eyes. I let her Estee Lauder scent envelop me and feel her like a current of electricity, both warm and fierce. I become her. I am beautiful. Indian masculinity is very different than North American masculinity, or gender, I should say, is very different. In North America, it's if you're assigned a boy, the worst thing you can do is act like a girl, right? Which was my experience, and I feel like most of my life I've spent trying to be a boy, which is partly what's been interesting about my transition, is I feel like in some ways it's a detransition. I came out to my parents as queer when I was 21, and we've had so many interesting and rigorous and challenging conversations since then. Then what's been amazing has been watching my mom grow. She will call me randomly and be like, what's the difference between gay and queer? Or now she cuts out articles from India's Pride and be like, look, us Indians do it better than you. And of course she's never been to a Pride in Canada, so she doesn't really know, but she's her whole thing is that India's tops, right? So I feel I feel very lucky that my mom has been supportive in those ways, despite her initial response. Especially because I make so much art about my mom, I think that there is this idea that it's we just hold hands, but I think the reason why I keep coming back to that relationship is because it is fraught. Even writing my first book, she was like, why are you talking about these things so publicly? Because, I grew up in a background where it's what happens in the home stays in the home. So to talk about it and be so vulnerable, it's I don't think my mom always understands why I do that. I don't always understand why I do it. Most of my life I've been trying to be a boy. I'm teaching myself to not have to do those things anymore.